Okay, so today's topic is, as I said, remote onboarding. We want to talk about how you can create those personalized experiences, connect with new hires, but of course, like ramp them up to full productivity as quickly as possible. But I wanted to start off with saying something that has been heavy on our minds, basically ever since the corona virus pandemic started, is that right now what we're experiencing isn't normal remote work. So if you're tuning in and you have not worked remotely before, please know that for and our team has been distributed since we started in 2018, that this is a challenging situation for us as well, right? So I want you guys to, bear in mind that, remote work and working from home in isolation are not the same thing. All right. But let's start off with remote onboarding. And essentially what I wanted to, tune you guys in is that the primary goal is, of course, to turn a new hire into that fully integrated employee that is just part of your team, right? And for that, basically, there's 3 steps that we, would consider best practice, which is all about preparing a process, defining it, then running your onboarding, and then most importantly, always check for feedback and then iterate based on that feedback and improve your process. So onboarding is not a static process, but it is actually something that can definitely evolve and improve over time. And it must evolve and improve over time, right? And so the way we wanted to split it up is that we say we're going to talk about everything that has to be done before onboarding, during onboarding, and afterwards, right? And I'm going to do pre-onboarding, and then Far will take over with the regular onboarding. So basically, pre-onboarding is part of that preparing those processes in advance, right? And what you want there is from that first day, you don't want to figure out those administrative details and like figure out all the hardware and just set up the appointments then, but you actually want to do all of that before, so the new hire really feels welcome that first day and can hit the ground running. For preparation, when you do it remotely, of course, you will have various accounts that the person needs to, get set up with, whether that's your, obviously email account, but also Slack, project management, like Asana. Make sure that you have all of those set up. And then a really important advice would be also already add them, for example, to the Slack channels that they will be part of in the future, so that they start off, they can fire up their Slack and they can already see the conversations that have been going on. Hardware ready to go is also pretty important. And I think it is definitely a challenge right now for those teams that were used to, handing over a laptop and whether it's a company phone or something, that first day. Now you got to time it and you got to ship it so that it's there on time. But yeah, definitely making sure that that is there before day one, so they can familiarize themselves with it. Communication is also an interesting one, and I think it is especially important when you close the new hire a couple of weeks or sometimes even months. I know in Germany, it is not uncommon to sign a new hire and then there's like 2 months until they start, just because they have long notice periods and maybe want to take a vacation. So it is that time lag there. There's definitely stuff you can do during those 2 months, for example. One would be just sending out reading material, pointing them towards blog posts on the company page. Already educate them on like what they can avail, whether that's benefits or, special offers, all those things, but also requirements. So when, you now onboard somebody who is going straight to their home office, like make sure that you educate them what you expect the home office setup to look like, and ask if they have everything available. And then in some cases, I've seen companies bring chairs to their employees, right? Like for them to have good office chairs and not sit at a kitchen table all day. So I think all of those things are definitely important in those first pre-onboarding time. What's interesting there as well, and a good idea that I heard from a company just to keep engagement up and keep that excitement going, is to send, for example, postcards with like information about the company or anything like that. It could also be, anything that we would call swag, right? Whether that's a coffee mug or the company T-shirt, like all those things that people sometimes have at offices, but in remote companies, definitely there is a lot of swag too. Sending that is like that physical reminder in their space that like that new job is going to start, and that's quite a cool thing when they sit there on that first day and like already use the mug, for example. And then on the logistics side, I think I want to point out is scheduling meetings with all stakeholders ahead of time seems very obvious. I have seen it otherwise, where on that first day, you're just trying to get a hold of everybody who needs to speak to that person. And obviously, team leads, people are busy. It can be then quite hard. So like make sure that you schedule all these meetings in way ahead of time. And Fareen will talk a little bit about in regular onboarding now, what remote teams do especially well. Because it is a little bit harder to find that like serendipitous time to work together in a remote environment, right? So you need to take care of processes there a little bit more. And I'm going to turn my cam off for a second so you can see the screen.
Great. Thanks, Angelina. So what can you hear me? No? Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Cool. So what I'm going to be talking to you about today is the onboarding process, what you actually need to do on the day that the new hire joins. FaceTime is extremely important, even if you're on, if you work from a regular organization or remote. So what I would advise you to do is plan in advance and kind of have your breakfast planned out, your coffee, meetings planned out, as well as your lunches. What you can do there in advance is probably, get a little bit of details from the new hires and share that with the team members that they're going to meet for these meetings. So, you can break the ice in advance, and you can pretty much do that the other way around, where you also share certain details of the team members that the new hire is going to meet. So it's a lot more comfortable when you just meet each other for the first time. It's also important to kind of have a buddy system in place. So, besides just assigning a manager or a mentor, what I would advise you to do is also probably take it a step ahead and maybe assign a team member who can be a buddy, as well as, probably have cultural buddies. The main goal for having a cultural buddy is to kind of answer any questions that they may have about the organization or about the culture. It does not necessarily have to be a meeting that happens every day, but once a week, a quick chat, could add a lot of value. For remote work support, even with remote companies, what we have seen is that they don't always hire individuals that already have remote work experience. So I think it's extremely important to have like guides in place that can help individuals kind of thrive in a remote environment. So, just making sure that you're talking to them about how the team communicates. So if you're heavy on asynchronous communication, make sure that, you kind of set expectations around that and help them understand how they need to react. If you have daily meetups or stand-ups for that matter, talk to them about that in advance. Talk to them about collaboration tools where they can find their tasks or where they can find their projects, and make sure that they are well aware of that well in advance before they actually dive in deeper into work. What we've seen with remote work is that it does come with a couple of disadvantages, like for example, isolation. So making sure that you kind of give them that support in advance, that if they do feel this way, this is probably what they can do. Help them in understanding, building routines kind of to help at the end of the day. So just helping them get started and, keep them healthy, mentally healthy through their remote work journey is the whole goal of having that remote work support. Talking about presentations, like Angelina mentioned earlier, what you can do is also, have asynchronous presentations so that you don't overwhelm them on day one. So you could send them, certain presentations about the company and the culture, while on the day of orientation, you could probably have presentations with, the CEO, the HR team, and team leaders from different functions. What we see very popular is AMA sessions, which is Ask Me Anything. And this is not only for the new hire, but also, you could have new hires as well as, existing employees to be a part of these sessions and kind of encourage them to get to know each other better through these sessions. They usually happen on Slack channels, and I've seen them to be really a lot of fun. Moving on to the job specific tasks, like going back to the fact that you do integrate them to the project management tools and tell them, this is where you can find your task, and your progress at each point will be monitored, and you have feedback with them about that. Depending on the kind of company that you are, we would also advise you for a co-working day. It's basically nothing but where you can basically set up a new hire with a manager or a mentor to just get to know, what's a life in your manager's day. It doesn't always have to be, with a video camera on. You can have that just, through a call. But, this is a more informal setup where, you also give the new hire an opportunity to ask any questions almost immediately. Mini internships are nothing but, learning and development through different projects. So, for your new hire, what you can do is assign maybe 20% of their time where they can take up projects in different functions. The next slide would be on making sure that you have a checklist in place. What you see right now is a checklist template by Trello. So if you do use this already, good job. But if you don't have a checklist in place, you can basically use this template. It's to kind of make sure that you have all your tasks and you're onboarding every new hire equally in a unified format. So this could be helpful, and you can find it online for sure. The post onboarding is more, on more feedback driven and how to improve your processes. Of course, besides having your 30, 60, 90-day feedback, what I would advise you to also do is probably have weekly pulse surveys that kind of go in. The end goal is to, understand what the new hire feels throughout their journey. So, particularly, what they find best about the hiring process, onboarding process, or if they're aligned with the organization, and what keeps them going. We would also encourage to have one-on-one feedback sessions. This could not only be, role specific, but just about what they feel and where they are at in their head at this point. Always maintain ongoing support. So, the buddy system that we did speak about earlier should be ongoing even outside of the training program. So, make sure that you foster those relationships over a period of time. And of course, people operations or HR business partners play an extremely important role here, where they should always, have an open door policy. What you can also do is probably just check in with the hire once in 6 months to see what they're doing, what really keeps them at the company. If there are any skills that they feel, they would want to kind of learn, and, if they would define anything differently, what would that be? Retention, we realize, is actually a really huge topic, but we also wanted to check with you guys that, would you be interested to, be a part of a webinar, which is purely on how you can retain remote employees, because we've seen that, of course, it plays a very important role in the entire employee life cycle. So if you would like us to do a webinar on retention, we would be happy to know about that. So just probably type in a yes in the chat box. But moving on to retention, what we would advise here is to kind of have a learning and development plan in place. So the usual, formal setup where you have skill-based learning programs, but you also have informal learning programs like, lunch and learn, where you could probably have a leader, mentoring a couple of individuals over lunch. The end goal of each of these programs in place is to collect feedback and to kind of, not only define your onboarding process, but any other process that could help retain an employee at the end of the day. And lastly, I just want to talk about companies. So there are two companies, of course, there are a lot of companies out there who are getting it right. But there are these two companies that particularly would like to highlight. They do things slightly differently, which would mean that, Help Scout, what they do, and I'm not sure if you guys are aware of it, no matter which position you join the company in, you do have the opportunity to do a week of training as a customer support, customer support executive. This is basically done, keeping in mind that you're integrating the new hire to understanding how the company functions, what the product is like, and how do the customers actually react to the product. So, that entire 1 week training covers all of that. What we see Buffer does differently is that they actually, at some point of time, iterated on their onboarding process. They had something that was called the 45-day boot camp, which for most companies would be a 3-month probationary period or trial period. What Buffer did here was, they kind of collated feedback from their managers as well as new hires to understand that it actually creates an environment of a lot of pressure where people couldn't really perform. Which led to a lot of people, they had to let go of these individuals through that time. So what they now function as is, a generic onboarding process. So, just getting back at the fact that all the feedback you do collect at the end of the day needs to be put to its true purpose to make sure that, you as an organization thrive as well as the new hire is happy at the end of the day. I think Angelina is going to continue from here, so I'm just going to go off.
Yes, I just switched my mic back on. Please ping me quickly and tell me that you can hear me fine. Otherwise, I'm going to feel very stupid, just being a moving math or something. Cool. Okay. Yeah. So thanks, Far, for highlighting those best practices. But I obviously know that there are a lot of companies out there that have existing onboarding processes that had those onboarding processes disrupted by Corona, or that just simply want to improve, right? And I think that's really the most important thing is when you are not quite sure if you will permanently just onboard remote employees, but it actually is something that you want to do temporarily, or move it in that more remote environment where you have someone who maybe starts at a new office, but someone at full ops team at a different office is responsible for that onboarding process. And the exercise that I told a few of those people that are struggling with it right now is to really think about what makes experience at an office. And I think we've all, had those. I think most of us have had a career where at some point, we had an onboarding at an office, and some of those maybe were great, some of them maybe were not so great. But I think what's really important there is for the ones who are the ones which turned out great and where you think the experience was awesome, identify those offline aspects of that onboarding, right? Whether that's just running into someone in the hallway and them stopping and welcoming you and saying hi to chat, all those things are part of that, feeling welcome at the company and starting. And in the second step, instead of having that as oh yeah, that's something that just happens at the office, really try and think about how can I model this virtually so that the person feels just as welcome. And for those suddenly remote people or suddenly working from home situations, I always encourage, no matter really what kind of process that is, whether that's in people ops or in an entirely different part of the organization, I always say find the most simple. Oh, sorry, she says she can't see the 4 arrows. That's strange. Maybe we can troubleshoot in a second. I always said find the most simple online alternative for those physical aspects, right? Don't over-engineer it with difficult tools and difficult processes. Just find something that's very simple and intuitive, and have that virtually. A great example of this is using a virtual office, which, for example, we as a fully distributed team don't use. The way we work just doesn't really align with that type of working. But for those companies that are normally used to having that new hire sitting in the same office with them and maybe listening into the calls that they're doing throughout the day, and as Far said, right, have that co-working aspect. Yeah, just find a very simple virtual office and just virtually sit there with everyone. So those are kind of the steps that I want people to take mentally to really make sure that the work from home onboards are just as excited. And the second one is that, just dropping in to check in on somebody is a lot harder when they are remote, right? You have to call them. There's this step. There's a friction there. So something like a virtual office could actually really help. An alternative would be just scheduling regular check-ins. Like if you're in other meetings all throughout the day and you can't really co-work, just really schedule those check-ins and make sure that you check in with the person multiple times throughout the day. But also bear in mind that meetings may take a little longer. Whether the new hire needs to set up the tech, or something's not really working, or we have like a bug somewhere, someone needs to go off and go back on. I think that is always a challenge. So just bear in mind that is something that you should probably take into account there. And finally, I think what Far has said as well is having that person up to speed as quickly as possible is that main goal. But you also want to take into account that right now we have like a heightened uncertainty in the world, and people are insecure, much more likely they're sometimes even afraid. So really supporting them in that remote work journey and what's going on at the company is super, super important. And there may be additional things that you want to do right now, like maybe telling them a little bit about how the home office transition went for you guys, and like what the different challenges were, and like what the direction of the company is, just to give them also that sense of security. Yeah. I promised, in like a promise to myself, to keep the commercial break as short as possible. This is just to finally wrap up and say 2 words about what we do for companies that are transitioning to remote work. Is what we call the remote work advisory, right? So we basically aim to deliver the most actionable insight, strategy, and processes to your team to really excel at remote working. And I know that probably those who are now sitting at home for a couple of weeks can think that it's the new normal already, but it is definitely something that when you do it right can really unlock your productivity. And those teams here that are I know there's a bunch of people in the call right now that have been working remotely for a long time. I'm sure they can attest to that. And that's basically what we want to do, right? We want everyone who's been thrown into this work from home experiment, or those companies that are now actually consciously saying, we like this remote model, like we think we want to, develop this further, for them to have a really good experience, increase their productivity and have like a long-term sustainable solution there where they have more flexibility for all employees. And whoever wants to know more about this, we're going to follow up with a few emails after the webinar as well. There's going to be more information there. If there's anything in particular that you guys would want from us, we're going to send the slides and at some point also the upload of the voice or the video. So you can rewatch this for sure. But if there's any additional resources from us, please, put it in the chat too, and we'll make sure to get that to you. Now would be an amazing time if you have any very particular questions, whether that's about remote onboarding or hiring, anything else, to throw that into the Q&A. I'm going to give you a minute to do that. And maybe I'll have Far come in as well. Sounds good. I'm going to move to that last slide. That's how you can reach us, or at least that's my email address. Can reach us directly. Thank you guys for joining for sure. I don't see any questions, Far.
No, neither do I.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Radina. Awesome. Good to see you. I'm going to stop the recording now. And I'll see you guys at the tables.
We actually do have a question.
Oh, one came in. All right, any suggestion? Okay, so Tapanjit, I hope I'm not pronouncing it wrong, Far.
Tapanjit.
Tapanjit, okay. Any suggestions for icebreakers when we onboard a new hire in a video call, introducing them to their team? That's a good one. Far, do you have a suggestion?
I actually very vaguely remember where you spoke about these games that you can play with your teams. I forgot. If you knew me better, That would be a good icebreaker. I forgot what it is. Do you want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah, like the phrase that you can use, not just for an onboarding, but I think generally in meetings, is to start off by saying, like, if you knew me really well, you would know that, right? And then you share something about yourself, like, I slept really poorly last night, or, my dog is sick, or I'm worried about something that just creates empathy and like a little bit of, personal connection for sure with the, with the other person. And I think one of those incredible things right now, incredible chances with that work from home situation, is that people are already in their personal space, right? So sometimes you see a funny background. I think right now you can see my childhood bedroom because I'm staying with my parents at the moment. So you see that wild wallpaper. So there's like just stuff you can talk about, not in an intrusive way, like not observing like what's that in the background, but like giving people that chance of opening up maybe a little bit more. And I think that has, for me, virtually always been a great icebreaker. It's just the environment you're in. Sometimes even the time zone, like what country are you in? Sometimes you don't know exactly.
Yeah, or where the conversations are. I think one of the interesting questions that you can ask them right now is that if you're in a country that is, restricted to a lockdown, then what would you do ideally when things, do get better? I think it's a great way to know what they do otherwise. And I think earlier in the presentation, I also spoke about, sending in a bio by the new hire so that, each of you guys are well familiar with who you're going to talk to and, kind of just be prepared with some questions.
Yep, absolutely. Cool. Okay, I think that's it with the questions. Now I'm going to stop the video and I'm going to see you guys at the tables.
Bye. Thank you.